Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today we are going to get into a brief guide to the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio. I am so excited for this video. I actually did a much shorter version of it, but I'm excited to finally do like a longer version and just expand on a few things. And it's just given me a chance to keep talking about this series. I started my own Sun Eater journey like late spring of 2024, and since then this has truly just become one of my, not even just all-time favorite sci-fi series, but just one of my all-time favorite series. I'm currently 4 books into the series and have also read 2 of the novellas and 1 of the short story collections. So I feel like I have taken in a lot of Sun Eater over the last year or so, and just excited to continue reading more and get deeper into the series, and especially catch up to where it is now with Disquiet Gods. But I've been excited to do a longer video like this because with the series slated to end in 2025 with Shadows Upon Time coming out, I imagine some of you are just going to be starting your own Sun Eater journeys, or maybe you read a couple books in the series already but just haven't touched it in a while, and you just kind of want to get back into the swing of things, maybe get a little bit of a refresher for what's going on. So that's really what this video is for, and again, it just gives me more of an excuse to keep talking about Sun Eater. This is definitely not meant to be like extremely comprehensive or anything, so I'm putting an emphasis on brief. I just kind of want to give you guys like a foundation for this series, give you a little bit of the history, kind of the timeline of where things are going so far with it, and I also want to get into who I think this series could be good for given your own reading taste. So yeah, it's just a little overview to hopefully help you find your footing in the world if you're starting for the first time, or maybe even refamiliarize yourself with a couple of things here and there if you are trying to dive back into the series. But either way, this is just exciting for me because I love Sun Eater so much. I love these characters, love this world, and I just can't wait to see where things keep going. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments where you are with your own Sun Eater experience, or if you haven't started yet but plan to, or if you just don't really care for the series but you just wanted to pop into the video. I want to hear about it all down below. This is all going to be completely spoiler free on my end as well, because I want you guys to have the best time as possible getting into this series. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into the video. First, let's kick things off just talking about what is this series. I feel like this series has just been really blowing up in the last few years or so. It's really popular here on BookTube, but also in the last couple of years it has trickled over onto other platforms as well. So you just have readers on all platforms just loving and obsessing over this series and Hadrian's story. And if you've been on the outside of Sun Eater, just hearing people talk about it, you're not really sure what's going on. Let's get into that. So this is a far future science fiction series, and it currently consists of 6 books in the main series. We have Empire of Silence, Howling Dark, Demon in White, Kingdoms of Death, Ashes of Man, and book 6 is Disquiet Gods. The 7th and final book, like I mentioned in the intro, is slated so far to come out sometime in 2025 and wrapping up the entire Sun Eater series. Even though we do have these 6, soon to be 7 main books in the series, the world of Sun Eater is so big that there are also novellas and short story collections that exist within the world of Sun Eater that you can read in between the different main books in the series. So Christopher Rocchio actually labels this series as sci-fantasy because as you start to get into the later books, you definitely see those fantasy elements being woven in. I will say though, for me personally, I feel more drawn to this series as a sci-fi reader and for its sci-fi elements than I do for its fantasy elements. But you can have a completely different experience when you get into the series for the first time, or if you're already reading the series and love the fantasy elements. So I definitely do respect and appreciate Rocchio labeling this as sci-fantasy, but I do really love the more sci-fi elements and how sci-fi heavy it is, especially with the space opera themes and all of that throughout the story. So this entire series uses a framing narrative, and our main character, Hadrian Marlowe, is somewhere in the distant future telling us the story of how he destroyed a sun and killed billions of people in the process, but also how in doing this, he ended the war against the Sollan, which the Empire has been fighting for centuries. Because Hadrian was responsible for ending this war in the way that everything kind of unfolded, he did earn this infamous title as the Sun Eater. I gotta be honest, that hooked me immediately. Hadrian tells you that up front. It's on the first page of the first book, Empire of Silence. And you get this incredible hook. It reels you in. There's so much intrigue to it. But I love how Hadrian is like, okay, now that you got that information, I'm actually gonna take you all the way back to the beginning. And he really does. You start when he's a nobleman's son and just really trying to figure things out. You get a sense pretty quickly that he is completely different from his father and his brother, and it doesn't want to lead in the same way as them. And it just becomes this really slow and almost kind of quiet story about how this young man who had everything laid at his feet, just one thing after another, just ended up on the wrong path, and how each decision that he made put him on the path closer to becoming the Sun Eater. But it does all start so small in Empire of Silence, and from there it just keeps growing, and the world keeps expanding, and the characters just keep getting bigger and bigger. It's so incredible. I love the first book so much, and just even the arc of Hadrian's journey in book one I thought was phenomenal. So book one, Empire of Silence, is just now one of my favorite book ones in the series, one of my favorite debuts that I've read. It was just incredible. So I have a lot of love for the first book. That's kind of the foundation of the story for Sun Eater, but the actual world of this series, the Sollan Empire, it's all so huge. There's a lot of details. So I want to use this next section to, just kind of go back to the beginning and give you some of the foundational details for the actual world of the series. So like I mentioned earlier, this is a far future sci-fi series, and it takes place approximately 20,000 years after us. So after Earth, our galaxy, sun, moon, all of that. So we are literally ancient history. But in the earliest days of the world of Sun Eater, there was a war between the Americani and what was known as the Early Empire. And this was all called the Foundation War. And so the result of this was the Early Empire won. And from this, the Sollan Empire was born. And the Sollan Empire is just the main, imperial entity in the universe of the Sun Eater, and it's still in place at the time that Empire of Silence starts. And the Sollan Empire is currently ruled by Emperor William the 23rd of Advent. One big thing to note about the Sun Eater series is that there are 500 million worlds that have been settled by humans, and half of those worlds have been settled under the Sollan Empire. And so in the world of Sun Eater, there are 5 major arms of the galaxy. We have the Orion arm, Sagittarius, Centaurus, Perseus, and the Norma arm. One important thing to note is that 4 arms of this galaxy, so Orion, Centaurus, Sagittarius, and Perseus, fall under the rule of the Sollan Empire. I will say there is a bit of the Perseus arm that they call outer Perseus, or the Perseus rim, or something that's not quite part of the Sollan Empire, but for the most part you do have the Perseus arm that's wrapped up into the Sollan Empire. And then just in terms of major organizations that exist in the Sun Eater universe, there are a lot of them. There's too many to cover. We're not going to get into any kind of depth here in this video, but there are 2 major ones that you hear about time and time again that are really important, really integral to just the foundation of the series. And the first one would be the Holy Chantry. So this is kind of the main religion of the Sollan Empire, but they also have a hand in regulating technology, keeping an eye on technology that's forbidden, all of that. They have their hands in a lot of places. And then the other big one is the Order of the Scholiasts. And Scholiasts, they can, be researchers, academics, philosophers, and also you see some scholiasts in higher positions of power as they offer counsel to lords on different planets. So for example, Hadrian's father has one, and Hadrian has a very close relationship with the scholiast that works for his family. And actually Hadrian himself wanted to be a scholiast before his life just got completely derailed over the events of Empire of Silence. So yeah, the scholiasts, they are extremely important in the world of the Sun Eater, in the Sollan Empire. And then just in terms of major entities in the world of the Sun Eater series, you have, of course, the Sollan. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is the biggest alien threat that anybody has ever seen. They are a nomadic kind of alien species, and they're terrifying, especially as you start getting into books like Demon in White. All hell just starts breaking loose, and I myself am just scared of whenever a Sollan pops up in over the course of this series. But you have the Sollan, and they get so interesting, and just there's so much depth to them as the series progresses. And then you also have an entity that I'm not going to really touch on at all, and that would be the Quiet. This is very mysterious. There's still so much speculation, even where I am in the series right now, about this. So I'm, again, not going to say too much about it, but this is something that just keeps evolving the longer that the series goes on. And it's just been really fascinating to see, how history plays into all of this. It's really incredible. So yeah, that brings us full circle back to book 1, Empire of Silence. And especially how in the first part of the book, we just get a lot of time with Hadrian, and we see the dynamic with his family, especially his father. He comes from the planet of Delos, and this planet is really known for its uranium deposits, and that's where Hadrian's family really made a lot of their money and have been able to kind of store a lot of their wealth in the uranium trade. And so Hadrian's grandmother is the duchess of this entire planet, and Hadrian's father is the lord of their major port city. And again, that's really the chunk of like the first part of Empire of Silence before Hadrian's life just completely changes. Things just completely fall off the rails. Nothing goes according to plan. And he finds himself in a position where he just has to find a way to survive and pull himself up and kind of keep the teachings of, again, the Scholiast that I mentioned, kind of keep his teachings in the back of his mind as he tries to figure out his life and get wrapped up in gladiator fights, and new and interesting characters begin to come into his life in Empire of Silence. And again, the world at large and the Cielsan threat just keeps getting bigger and more intense, and you are getting all of that in the background, and like mysteries start unraveling in Empire of Silence about the other entity that I mentioned. So there's just a lot going on. It's just such an incredible story, you guys. And I've gotten comments like Empire of Silence is too slow, it's too long, it's boring, they hate Hadrian's voice, like all of this. And I gotta disagree. I love it so much. And it's just truly like the perfect starting point. It is the perfect foundation for what this series starts to grow into, especially as we get into the second one, Howling Dark. Oh, I just love it so much. So again, that's just all of the more like foundational world kind of history stuff that I think is important to know as you guys really start to get into the series, or again, maybe you're coming back and just needed to refamiliarize yourself with the beginning of things for the world of Sun Eater. So finally, we're going to get into who I think would love this series, who should be reading Sun Eater. Since I started reading this book or reading this series back in late spring of last year, I have seen so many comparisons in my comment section. I've gotten people talking about The Name of the Wind because of the framing narrative and the writing style. I've gotten people talking about Red Rising just because it's another big sci-fi series. I've gotten people on TikTok comparing it to Robin Hobb. And the big one, of course, is Dune. Like, this is just a Dune ripoff. Why read this when Dune exists? I mean, I feel like I've seen it all at this point. So I'm gonna just share like my own personal preferences, what I actually think about some of those other books that it's been compared to, and maybe you might fall in the same category. So the first one is The Name of the Wind. I personally do not like The Name of the Wind at all. I don't like the actual story. I don't like the characters. I'm so uninterested in The Name of the Wind. The second one is Robin Hobb, Farseer trilogy, Live Ship Traders. Personally, I've only read Assassin's Apprentice. I do want to continue on with Farseer trilogy, but just from that first book, I'm not really a big fan. I thought it was fine. I don't really love Fitz as a main character at all, but I do want to continue that series just to see how he grows. And I also want to finish it so I can move on to the Live Ship Traders, because I do think I'll have a better time with that series than I would with Farseer. And I know you don't have to read Farseer to read Live Ship, but I want to go in order. And then you've got Red Rising. I say this all the time. Red Rising is one of my all-time favorite series, sci-fi or not, just one of my all-time favorite series. Some of my all-time favorite characters. I love that cast. They have grown so much, but they're completely different. This is a completely different series, and I actually don't think it's helpful at all to recommend Sun Eater to someone who loves Red Rising, because they are so vastly different on every level. Just the pacing, this is more of a character focused, Sun Eater is more of a character focused, kind of slower driven sci-fi series. And not to say that the character work in Red Rising is lacking, because again, these are some of my all-time favorite characters, but I do think Red Rising has just that more action feel to it. The plot moves a little bit quicker, and just even the scope of the stories scope of the worlds of these stories are so different. Like, yes, Red Rising has gotten so big through the years. They've been to Mars and Venus and Pluto, like everywhere. But this, I don't know, I can't explain it. Sun Eater is it's on a different level. Like, we are in a completely faraway galaxy. There's these billions of planets. Space travel is a little more intense. So I think just scope wise, it is a little bit more on that epic scale, even though, again, I keep saying it, I love Red Rising so much, so I don't want to say anything bad about Red Rising, because I just think it's such an incredible series. Again, one of my favorites. And then last but not least, you always get the Dune comparisons. I have seen that so much in the Goodreads reviews. I've seen it in my own comments on different platforms. This is a Dune ripoff. And my take on that is, well, first of all, I love the films Dune. I love Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2. I would put those up with some of my favorite movies of all time. I love those. As far as the book Dune goes, I didn't love it. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. Like, I didn't come away from it like, oh my God, what an incredible sci-fi reading experience. That wasn't my time with the book Dune. But again, movies are amazing. But I mean, Dune is a classic. It's foundational sci-fi. It has inspired tons of sci-fi stories. And so I think putting Sun Eater up against that I don't agree with that. I think it's a little unfair. Yes, because of the epic scope of the story, and you have things like noble houses, and the politics get really, really nitty gritty, really detailed as the series goes on. I think that's where you're getting a lot of the comparisons from. And I just think Christopher Rocchio does such a phenomenal job putting his own spin on different sci-fi themes and sci-fi subplots and storylines and things that we just have loved for a long time, and just create something that feels incredible and epic and just really, really amazing. So I don't know, that's my 2 cents on it. I think Sun Eater has just done just such a great job just kind of making its own path in the sci-fi and fantasy space, and I think it's something that will be around for a really long time, if I'm being honest. I have just been having a phenomenal time making my way through this series. I plan to wrap up Kingdoms of Death, if not at the end of this month, then going into early February. And again, it's been perfect. I have fallen in love completely with the world, the scope of it, and just the way that it's told. I think it's just so thoughtful and so careful and so well plotted. And just with each book, things just feel like they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the stakes keep getting higher and the mysteries keep getting deeper. And it's all still done with this really incredible narrative and writing style. So I love it. I hope this video has inspired some of you to start your own Sun Eater journeys. I look forward to chatting with you guys so much more in 2025 about this incredible series, and I just can't wait to see where things keep going in Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man, Disquiet Gods, and I will definitely be doing some fun things on the channel as we lead up to that final release for Shadows Upon Time. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments where you are in your journey, if you plan to start it, or if you don't and you just wanted to watch this video. And also, if you want to, like, let's chat about the history and the lore and try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. Or if you want to add anything to something that I mentioned, please feel free to do that in the comments, or again, any corrections that you have. I hope Christopher Rocchio doesn't see this and be like, actually, everything you said in the history section was completely wrong. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.